Welcome back everyone to the Hello World Guide. This is another episode of the Python Pong game series using Pygame, and in this video we are going to continue by starting to implement some of the collision detection and resolution stuff in our game. And in a Pong game, collision detection and resolution is very simple. There are basically two things that we need to check. First of all, it's pretty obvious, we want to check for the ball's collision with the players, and the second one is that we want to check whether the player is going out of the screen, because currently if I run my game, what you can see is that my player can go completely out of the screen, which is not what we want. We want the player to only stay inside of the screen. So these are two things that we'll need to do. Now for the first thing, the ball one, that's a bit more complicated, but for the player thing, just to get the player to not leave the screen, it's pretty simple. We can use we can just clamp the player position between 0 and the screen height, and in order to do that we can use like minimum and maximum functions. So we will set player 1 position to the maximum of the minimum, and first of all we'll calculate the minimum of the player position or the screen height, and if the player position is greater than the screen height, it will automatically clamp it to the screen height. And of course we'll need to subtract the player height from the screen height, because this represents the top corner and the position, so we need to subtract that. And then we'll check if it is less than 0, then we'll take a maximum of it and 0, which means that if it's greater than 0, then we'll just set it to 0. And similarly we'll do it with the player 2's position. So if I were to go ahead and run this, what you can see now that my player cannot go up or down, and player 2 cannot go up or down at all. So that means that it is working, and now we are able to set our player's position correctly. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Alright, for the implementation of the ball's collision with the rectangles, we'll need to create a function that detects whether a ball is intersecting with a player or not. And if you remember, the player is a rectangle and the ball is a circle, so we'll need to just create a basic geometrical function for that. First of all, we'll create a main function here. The only reason we'll do that is because we want to be able to define our functions in any order we like, and if we like keep this in a separate function, then we'll have to make that the intersects or whatever function we create at the top, and this way what we can do is we can make this inside of a single function, and then we will go ahead and check if the name of the module is equal to main, and then we'll call the main function. Now for the actual intersects function, we'll just create a definition of intersects, and it will take 3 arguments. The first one will be called rect, and it will basically be an instance of the class pygame.rect, and the second one will be if radius, which will be a float, and the third one will be center, which will be a list of 2 floats. And we'll just for now keep it empty, and this function is supposed to return a boolean depending on whether this rectangle collides with the radius and the center or not. Now for the implementation, first of all we'll need to calculate a couple of things. The first thing will be the circle distance x value, which will be calculated by taking the absolute value, because the distance should always be positive, so we'll take the absolute value of the center 0, which will be the center's x value, minus the rectangle dot center x. This center x is a variable inside of the pygame.rect class, which gives us the actual center of the rectangle instead of the top left corner. And now we are going to do a similar thing here. We'll just create the circle distance y, and we'll set it to rectangle.center y. Now we'll need to check whether this distance is first of all we'll do 2 things. We'll check whether the circle is completely inside of the rectangle, or it's completely intersecting the rectangle or not, and if both of these fail, then we'll check if we actually need to check whether the corners are intersecting or not. So the first of all thing we'll do is we'll check if the collision is just won't occur. So for that we'll take our circle distance x and check if it is greater than rectangle dot width divided by 2. Now this is a pretty math formula, and we'll add the circle radius to it, and you can Google more about them if you really want to, but I'm going to just implement it here. These are like geometrical formulas that you can use to get whether something intersects or not, and we'll basically paste this here, and I will actually rename the radius to r, because that will make it stuff a bit more compact. And then what we can do is we can basically if either of this is true, then that means that we'll need to return false here, and we'll need to make sure we check y here with the rectangle height instead of width for the second condition. Now for checking returning true, we'll inverse this, as you should probably be able to guess. We'll check if less than or equal, and if it's less than or equal, then we'll return true. And now if that both of these fail, that means that we are going to check for the corners. So we are going to check corner x, which we set to circle distance x minus the rectangle dot width divided by 2. Again, some geometrical formulas, and similarly for y, we'll use rectangle dot height this time around. And then we'll get the distance. We'll get it using the simple Pythagoras theorem, but we actually want the distance squared, so we won't take its square root. We'll just take our corner x, then we'll square it, and then we'll add to it our corner y also squared. We won't take the square root because we want the distance squared and not the actual distance. Then we'll check if this distance is less than or equal to the radius, and radius raised to the power of 2. If it's less than, then that means it is intersecting, else it is not. And yeah, this is pretty much it for our intersect function. And now we need to actually use this function. So what I'll do is I'll go up here, and by the way, you want to make sure we check center 1 here, not 0 in the y value. And what we'll do is now we'll go up here, and inside of where we are doing the movement, after we have done the movement, we'll create a variable called p1rect, which will be a pygame.rect, and we'll just copy this code here that we have got when we are drawing the players for calculating the player's rectangle, and we'll put this here, and in here we'll just replace this with the player1rect. It also takes a pygame.rect along with a simple list, and here we'll initialize our pygame.rect like that. And it will do a similar thing for the player2rect, and we'll just copy the code from down here, and in here we'll replace it with p2rect. Awesome. So now what we need to do is we are going to check if we use our intersect function that we created earlier to check whether our player1 rectangle is intersecting with our ball. And for the ball, we'll pass in ball size for the radius, and for the center just construct a list out of ball x and ball y. If that is true, then for now let's just print player1 touches ball. And if that is not true, then we are going to simply print player2 touches ball. And yeah, that's all pretty awesome. But well, let's go ahead and one thing we need to do, by the way, is that I put 3 underscores here. We need to change that, and let's go ahead and test this, see whether it works or not. What you should be able to see is that actually it does not work, because we'll need to change all of these variables, assign them inside of the main function. And I think we have got a typo down here. We also need to say player height actually here, instead of just we missed the t. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. And run that, and you can see that it says player2 touches ball as soon as the ball touches the player2. And if I where we are setting the ball direction, I set it to -1. What you should see is that it now says player1 touches ball when the player1 actually touches the ball. And after this, the only thing that is left is that our ball direction is currently not changing at all. We are just printing some messages. So what we'll do is you can see that we are checking if the player1 intersects. Now if that is the case, what we are going to do is let's just copy this line of code that we have got here and paste it there. The reason for that is because if it touches player1, that means we are going to basically reverse its direction, so it goes to player2 instead of player1. And similarly for player2, if that's the case, then we'll reverse its direction to -1, so that it goes back to player1. And let's go ahead and test that out. So python game.py, and you can see that it's now kind of working. It's working like a simple basic Pong game, and it does work. While it does work, and the ball does change as it collides with our player, that is not exactly enough right now, because the ball will only move in one direction, and we want the ball to move in different directions depending on like whether it hits the player in the center or at the very edge or something like that. So yeah guys, that is pretty much it for this video, and in the next video we'll implement it so that the ball actually changes direction accordingly, also kind of move up and down as well. So we'll do that in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and share this video with other people as well, so you don't miss the next one. And I'll see you in the next one, and bye.